Julian Strawther, Jalen Pickett, Tyson Hunt. We got new guys. They got
Tyson Hunt.
They got introduced to the Nuggets. We'll talk about them and more on Locked On Nuggets.
You are Locked On Nuggets, your daily Denver Nuggets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Nuggets, your daily Denver Nuggets podcast, part of the Locked On Network, your team every day. It's Hunter Tyson, by the way. Appreciate you guys joining us and making this part of your day. You can join us on all platforms from YouTube, where you can join a live version of the show and chat with folks hanging out with us like Malutin and J-Trap and Funky Puma and 5555555-ish is back in the chat and was first in today. We appreciate you guys making this part of your day. Make sure to leave us the 5-star reviews if you're listening to us on Apple Podcasts or whatever app that you're using. If there's a review function, please hit us with those reviews. They help us out so much. You would be surprised at how much help it gives us. My name is Matt Moore. I'm the senior NBA writer for the Action Network, joined by Adam Mars of DNVR. You can catch pre and post game content before and after every Nuggets game, and off-season content all summer long, including, I'm sure, coverage of Serbia's run in FIBA World Cup as well. I will tell you, Adam, I was like, oh, it's Hunter Tyson. It's Hunter Tyson. It's Hunter Tyson. And then I was like, it's Tyson Hunt. Like, that's the name that I will, that's what it sounds like to me. It's Tyson Hunt, but it's Hunter Tyson. On today's show, we will talk about the Nuggets first round and second round draft picks, which hopefully I'll get the names of right. We'll talk about what what Adam's feelings are. This is going to be a Jalen Pickett love fest for you guy, Adam, here on the show. He's going to talk a lot about why he loves that pick. We'll talk about the overall fit of those guys, thoughts in the presser, and more. We'll talk about Christian Braun and whether or not he should play in Summer League for the Denver Nuggets. And we'll talk about where the Nuggets are lacking going into free agency, with free agency set to be just about 5 days away. Glad to have you with us on a Tuesday. I'm back from vacation. I went to Steamboat Springs, beautiful Steamboat Springs. Shout out to Winona's in Steamboat Springs. That diner is an absolutely just incredible breakfast spot. My kids ate there. We ate there 4 times in 3 days. It was absolutely amazing. I'm just want to give out some love for a Colorado original, Adam.
There you go.
How are you?
I love it.
How are you today?
I'm doing good. I'm continuing to go further and further down the Jalen Pickett rabbit hole. Every day it grows a little more intense.
Let's start there. Let's start with old Jalen Pickett. And I think that's a good way to put old Jalen. These are all old players. Old Jalen Pickett. Grandpa, as he was named.
Man, I love it. His nickname is Grandpa. Oh,
his nickname Grandpa by his
We've had a dad, we've had an uncle, now we've got a grandpa.
What is the thing about him? If I had to ask you, I mean, I'm sure that you're not a guy that's going to single in on one thing, but if I ask you the biggest thing about him that you're just like, I love this about Jalen Pickett's game, what's the thing that you like the most?
He gets the ball popping. I mean, he's just a good passer. You know me, I have a type. This is what it is you have to separate. I mean, when I say you, I mean me. I have to separate the love his skill set versus how well is it going to apply. And you know, the first part of that, his skill set really is, first of all, he's so interesting. He plays basketball unlike anybody else. I love that it's nicknamed booty ball because first you hear it and you think, okay, it's funny. His style of play is called booty ball because he's strong. You know, I don't know. I'm not sure how tall he is, but he's big and he plays bigger. He's got that Julius Randle strength where even guys that are the same size as him, he just pushes them out of the way. Like he knows he's stronger than even what his size is, and he's got pretty good physical, strength. But he plays this style where he gets you on his hip, and then he just almost booty bumps you and just kind of controls the game from at that pace and in that way. And I just love his style. It's so fun. He passes. He's got great vision. He seems like he'd be a lot of fun to play with. He's got a wide variety of skills. And then the idea that every analyst and coach in the NBA is going to have to start saying booty ball is just it's too enticing.
Pickett did at the combine 6'2" without shoes, which I don't necessarily care about as much. I always prefer the with shoes stat.
Whatever the standard is, I feel like we cross compare all the time.
197.8 pounds at the weigh-in.
I got a clip for you real quick, Matt.
Okay.
Just real quick.
They go to booty ball. And, it's really, really hard to guard.
You've never gone to a clip in StreamYard before? Like, you've never done anything. You've never shown a tweet, never shown a video from the presser, nothing. The first thing that you have ever done on StreamYard in this show is to show the booty ball clip.
How great is it an old coach happened to sit up there and say booty ball? I just love it.
Really amazing. 6'7" wingspan for Pickett. So he's compact, right? But he is extremely powerful. I will say, like, I did a few clips on him. Are you of the opinion that, like, what are players on the Nuggets roster that he's likely to play with? Because one of the things that has bothered me is that whether it's Strother or Pickett or whoever, everyone's like, well, with Yoke. And I'm like, okay, but like everyone looks great with Nikola. And not everyone gets to play with Nikola. So,
that's what's interesting, though, Matt, for me about Pickett is I actually think he is if he hits, he would be the guy that is Jokic when Jokic is not on the court. Meaning would he play well with Jokic? Probably, because to your point, everyone does. Although I don't know that he's the perfect fit because he does the Jokic stuff. So do you need somebody to do that when Jokic's on the court? I don't know. The idea for me, the hope, is that he can be good enough that he would be the replacement for Jokic, so you don't fall off stylistically from when Jokic goes to the court. So right now, if Jokic is on the court, Aaron Gordon cuts hard, he seals hard. Guys spot up, they get to the corner, they get to their spots because they know they'll be rewarded, right? Jokic's going to find you depending on what the defense does. When Jokic goes to the bench, I feel like it's a little more stagnant. Guys aren't cutting as hard. The ball's not moving. And there's an understanding that, hey, why would I cut really hard here? I'm probably not going to get it. He's a guy that I think played, at least in college, in a way that was rewarding to do all of those cuts and screens and keep movement in the offense. So if he is good enough to do those things at the NBA level, then you can have a level of continuity between your two units, even though him and Jokic are different players.
That's really interesting. That's really fascinating. They found their second unit Jokic at booty ball guard in the second round. Would be an incredible Nugget story.
He's also, by the way, Matt, a really good scorer. And so I've been going through over the weekend, it was all of his playmaking, all of the setup. Yeah. Last night, I'm going through a lot of his scoring. I want to see, like, all right, let me look at every shot he took so I can see what patterns emerge. First of all, he's a pretty good three-point shooter. He shot 38% last year. And when you look at the types of shots he took, they aren't easy. He kind of operated the way Jokic does from three-point line, where it's not his preference to take the three, even though he's pretty good at it. His mind frame is elsewhere. But when he is forced, and a lot of his threes were late shot clock, they were difficult shots because it's like, I got to create something here. And I don't think he's a great three-point shooter. I don't think he's ever going to be like Michael Porter Jr. or that mold. But I think he's a good one. I think he's like a reliable three. I don't think he's a liability that teams are going to be like, we're going under on every screen. So I think he is good and can grow into being a very good three-point shooter, even if it's not something he's looking for. And then he's very good at just getting the separation 8 feet from the basket. Like, he uses his size, kind of bumps you, and then falls away or pivots away and gets to like a little 8-foot shot that he's very, very good at.
I like his at rim numbers are really good. 1.28 points per possession at the rim, 64% from the field. Catch and shoot, he shot 38% from three last year. Are you of the opinion that some of the shooting is maybe based off of he's going to struggle with expanding to the 3-point line in the NBA?
I think so. I think most players do. Again, you can just tell guys who are natural shooters, and Strother maybe is a little bit of this, where you're like, that's just a shooter. And then you're guys that have worked to become good, reliable shooters. He's the second type. He's the guy that I think has worked to become reliable. And his three-point shot, to me, I think will be on like a Bruce Brown caliber. Is Bruce Brown a great three-point shooter? No. But is he a reliable one who can get hot and not a guy that you're just going to leave open? Yes. And I think he can be like that.
How do you feel about a lineup with Pickett, Strother, and Brown?
Christian Braun, I assume,
yes.
on that one.
Kiddo's lineup.
I mean, again, they're both two guys are so young. We'll get to Strother later. I'm pretty low on Strother as sort of the counterbalance to all of this. I think I'm lower than most. It's a little, I don't know. It's a weird one. You'd have a shooter, you'd have another defensive player, and then you have a guy who's a little bit of both in Pickett. It might work. I mean, positionally and functionally, you have the floor spacer, you have the slasher, and you have the point guard. So functionally, I think it could work. I just am low on Strother, so I look at that and go, it's probably not good enough defensively in the backcourt.
I assume you feel pretty confident that Nikola will like playing with Pickett.
I think he's going to like Pickett. I don't know how much he'll play with him again. That's the thing, is I think he's another guy that he'll like appreciate watching, but playing with. Some of his talents just get wasted because you need to get the ball to Jokic every time. Get the ball out of your hands, get it to his hands. But I think he would be good. I do like, he's a good, I put this on a video. I made a 20-minute scouting video up on the DNVR YouTube page. He's very good off ball. I mean, in college, he played on ball. And by the way, when people say like, you know, his usage was so high, his teammates loved playing with him. And I think that usage being high was a function of their style of offense. And then I saw somebody in the chat say they're stagnant. I don't think they are. They ran a very, like, there was a lot of motion in their offense. Guys were constantly moving. And I actually loved watching their offense when I started scouting it. But he actually has, in rare instances in college, when he played off ball, he played it extremely well, was a great cutter, was a really good passer off the cut. So he would cut, catch, and make a quick touch pass off of it. And then he was a good connector. When he was just like a corner or wing spacer, he was very good at making quick swing passes, you know, if that was the right play. So I don't think he's selfish or likes the ball, like over enjoys having the ball in his hands. I just think it was a function of what he was for Penn State.
That's really cool. That's really good to hear because that fits very well with what the Nuggets do. The guy that comes to my mind when you talk about this, because what you're talking about also is like a guy that can have the ball in his hands, but also functions as a secondary creator, right? Yeah. The guy that you're making me think of is Lonzo Ball.
Yep, I mean, he's very Lonzo-esque. That's why I like him. I mean, it's a similar corner of the world. Yeah.
All right, on the other side, we'll talk about Julian Strawther. Why Adam's a hater. We'll get into a little bit of that. Plus, we'll talk about, should Christian Braun play Summer League? Should Christian Braun play Summer League? We'll talk about that on the other side. But first, I need to tell you about eBay Motors. For a championship team, it's all about making sure every player is a perfect fit. It's the same when it comes to your vehicle. Every part needs to fit just right. So the next time that you need parts and accessories, head to eBay Motors. With eBay Guaranteed Fit, you can be sure every part you need fits right the first time around. Just add your ride to My Garage and look for the green check to know that the part will fit or your money back. Because just like in sports, confidence is the name of the game when you shop on eBay Motors. And with over 122 million parts to choose from, you'll be back in the game in no time. After all, it's easy to bring home a win when the right parts are guaranteed. Get the right parts, the right fit, and the right prices on ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. We'll be right back on Locked On Nuggets. Back here on Locked On Nuggets. Thanks for joining us, making us part of your day. Appreciate you guys being with us on a Tuesday, getting Adam's exuberance over Jalen Pickett, which will continue throughout Summer League. You're going to have to let me know on Twitter at Locked On Nuggets if you want me to just film Adam during the Jalen Pickett minutes at Summer League. Like, I'll just get like a live cam on him.
I'm curious how he's going to be honest, at Summer League, because he's so unique and because that is basically pickup level basketball.
Yeah, the disorganization. Some guys don't look good.
And I wonder if he'll be, I mean, he could go either way. They did bring in one of his teammates from Penn State to be on the Summer League roster, who's a pretty good shooter and he has good chemistry with, so maybe that helps. But 2 point guards, I think it's actually, Summer League, I know we say this every year. Harrison Wynn's been teasing me. The Nuggets have an interesting Summer League for a few reasons. One, in that they actually have a lot of players that will be playing.
Yeah.
Including maybe Christian Braun, we'll talk about here in a second. But also, they have 2 point guards fighting for the same role on the same team. That's inherently a fun dynamic.
Man, that is interesting.
With this, it could have disaster potential even, you know, when it's both these guys trying to impress doing the same job.
But I also think that I think that a lot, well, I'll also say this, a lot of that does get into like what your approach is. Because some people in the league will be like, come on, it's Summer League. Like, no. And I'll just tell you, like, some teams take they take Summer League extremely seriously because they take everything extremely seriously. And those teams tend to be very organized. And those teams, because there's also a message conveyed of like, you're not going to get judged on how many points you score.
Right.
Like, that's not going to help or hurt you based off of like, if you shoot badly, we're not going to cut you.
Right.
Unless that's like a pure shooter, right? Like, that's not what's going to wind up happening.
I think for me, Summer League, it's less about are they good or bad and more about what things seem to have translated or, you know, what popped. Like Christian Braun last year played great defense. He didn't shoot well, So you would say he played poorly. But to me, it was like, no, his defense in anticipation really looks like it's going to be NBA level. That was the important data point.
Did Calvin Booth answer who's going to coach or not? Did Malone answer who's going to coach Summer League?
Malone didn't speak, only Calvin, and no, it wasn't even asked. So I will be curious to find out who that'll be.
All right, I might dig around on that, see if I can find out. I want to hit this point real quick before we get to Strother. Ashford says, will Malone give any significant minutes to PY and then you do draft picks during the regular season?
Too far away to know, to be honest.
This has been like a thing that I just want to, like, everyone else has gotten their victory laps. I just want to take a little bit of my time. This is the one thing. Like, Malone played RJ Hampton because RJ Hampton busted his ass on defense and they had no other better options. But like he played RJ Hampton. Christian Braun not only worked his way into the rotation, played in the finals. Bones Highland was the backup point guard going into this season. So like, I don't know any coach that's going to be like, I love playing rookies. Give me some rookies. No coach in the NBA is like that. None. Because they know that it's high mistake basketball that lowers their chance of winning and increases the odds of them getting fired. But I do think at this point, it's fair to be like, no, if the situation calls for it, Malone will play the young guys. I think that's fair at this point to say.
I mean, part of this is we're kind of entering a new phase for the Nuggets, I think, where they're going to just have more of these players on the roster by necessity. Like the NBA set up where the Nuggets have a very expensive top 5 and they're going to have a very cheap, bottom 10. And depending on whether or not Bruce comes back, whether or not Jeff Green is brought back, all those things, Malone might not have options. It might come down to things like Reggie Jackson or Jalen Pickett. And if that's your option, you're talking about a vet who's even by Michael Malone standards, probably past his prime, long in the tooth, versus a rookie who's too green. Both of those are almost equally tough options for a coach to make. Whereas last year, Jeff Green, still a player, you still had guys that were a little bit more like reliable to play. So I think that's going to be one of the interesting storylines of the Nuggets next season.
Let's talk about Strother. So Julian Strother, you're not as high on, which is interesting because most of not just CT Fazio, who's always my comparison point, but like a lot of Nuggets Twitter I've seen is pretty high on Strother. So I'm interested to hear why you're not as high on. And it's okay. You can I understand that you're open to possibilities, but like initial reads.
I have no pride in my draft takes. Like this is not a thing that I get sensitive about. To me, it's almost like it's one of the lamer things I think to really stake your flag on because there's just so many variables at play, most of which most people will never know. But for me, Strother, you just look at the skill set. First of all, he's an incredible shooter and he has incredible confidence. You know who he reminds me of as I started getting into the film? I told Harrison this last night. He reminds me of high school LaMelo Ball. And that, remember LaMelo's shot selection was just so he's so confident that he would take he could be off balance and falling and shoot him. Strother is similar. He makes 40% of his threes. So this is not a critique of him. It's to say that to be a great shooter, you have to have no conscience, right? And he has that for sure. He's very quick triggered. Some of his misses are horrible misses, hits the top of the backboard because he shot it so fast. And then he'll get a shot 1 minute later and swish it from 40 feet. He has no hesitation on his jumper, and I believe in it. The reason I don't believe in him, everybody talks about the great floater, and that's a big thing. The floaters replace rim shots because he's not good at getting to the rim or good at finishing at the rim. And so he's better than most at floaters, but most people are better at layups than floaters, and he takes more floaters than layups, if that makes sense. So I don't know that he's going to be able, if he can't do that in college, the NBA, I think he's going to have a hard time getting to and finishing at the rim. And I just think that might limit him as an offensive player before you even get to the defense.
I always think back to the Jose Alvarado thing with D'Angelo Russell. Are you familiar with that clip?
What was it?
D'Lo was playing the Pelicans early on in Jose Alvarado's career, and D'Lo had not read the scouting report, unsurprisingly. And you hear him yell out, can he shoot?
Oh,
and
yeah.
Jose Alvarado answers him, yes, I can shoot, which was amazing. The reason I bring that up is I feel like the guys are going to ask him, can he get to the rim? And then the answer is no, he's 45th percentile nationwide at the rim is Julian Strawther. But I think for me, the reason I liked it when I did the very quick work on draft night was just, I don't think the Nuggets have a lot of guys that are one-dimensional. Like they actually this is one of the things is, and it's one of the reasons, can I wax a little bit here? I'm so like, my basketball spirit has been so invigorated by the Nuggets' success. And it's not just because I do this show. It's that like they played such a cool brand of basketball and it worked and it won. Like they weren't just like, yeah, we're going to have 2 dominant players and surround them with a bunch of guys that can shoot. Right? Like that's essentially every James Harden team. Even when it was like Clint Capella, that pick and roll was you couldn't stop it because of Harden, not because of Capella, but because of Harden. And it was just like on the other side, we're just going to have like 3 dudes that all they're going to do is spot up and shoot. And it is like really boring and predictable. And like, I don't hate it because like I like the diversity, but I love the fact that like AG can do a bunch of stuff. And actually KCP did a bunch of stuff on, like off of handoffs, rising from that short nail jumper, stuff like that. And like Bruce Brown, obviously doing everything that they did. So like, there's all these guys that can do everything. That said, I think often when you have guys that are more versatile, you do often lose a little bit of pure shooting. And so maybe like having a guy on roster that could potentially be like, no, like this is what he does, but he's extremely high level at it. Like, and also that's a building block where you start with that and then you add more stuff, which is like how I want to talk about Christian Braun as well. Like that's a thing that I want to talk about. I don't even necessarily know that the Nuggets, you can't say the Nuggets are lacking shooting. They were the best. They were the second best team in the league and like one of the best point teams and all these things.
Wait, well, by the way, Calvin did though. That's why I was laughing. Calvin did say there were times in the playoffs where I felt like they were one shooter shy. Yeah, one shooter short.
Which is, crazy, but given the offensive rating they put up. But I do kind of get it. And especially I think on the second unit is I do think you have to have a lot of threats for the spacing to be correct for any unit without Nikola. That's what I think is really funny. Again, it's just like amazing what Jokic is, that the problem when your 7 foot slower center is on the floor, your problem is that you don't have enough spacing because he creates so much gravity for everyone else that the spacing is like that. Again, it's just really interesting stuff. Like we're in a totally new era of the NBA and it's really fascinating.
I think Strother, unlike where Pickett, I'm more excited about his non-Jokic value. Strother is a guy that, the guy shoots, man. And when he's open, he's deadly. And to your point, if it's just a matter of, hey, we need an extra shooter on the court, throw him out there with Jokic, he's going to get wide open shots and he's going to make them. And he has a quick trigger.
Yeah, look, his all field goal attempts last season in college, he was still at a 1.14, 84th percentile offensively.
And that's without getting to the rim. That's right. So that's the stuff where it's like he's almost, you said one dimensional. Nuggets not have him. He's kind of one dimensional, I think. Yeah. He has the floater, but to me, again, I discount the value of that floater because I don't want the Nuggets shooting a bunch of floaters. Yeah. But he is a really, really good 3-point shooter, and he's one-dimensional, but he's great at that one dimension.
On the other side, we'll talk about whether Christian Braun should play in Summer League. Also, a look at where the Nuggets are lacking going into free agency. We'll talk about some of the options there and a couple of ideas for what they can look at. We'll talk about that and more on the other side here on Locked On Nuggets. Back here on Locked On Nuggets, thanks for joining us, making this part of your day. Appreciate you guys being with us. Matt Moore alongside Adam Mares on a Tuesday as we kick off. Maybe I guess it's fair to say that we kick off like this is like the real offseason discussion. We're talking about draft picks and summer league and free agency and all that stuff. Programming notes: if the Nuggets do anything that's like whoa, which I don't think any of us we don't expect that because I don't know if you know this, but the Nuggets won the championship. But if they were to do something that's like whoa, we'll do an emergency pod on that. We will do, be on the lookout for that. So if the Nuggets make a free agency signing that we're not expecting, we'll be in the mood and the zone to do that. Let's talk about Christian Braun for a second. So the news kind of came out that Christian Braun, is that a fair suggestion?
Yes.
Might.
I poked around and said nothing had been decided yet.
Nothing has been decided yet. Christian Braun might play in Summer League.
Like a game.
Yeah, right. There's like a couple of different ways to look at this. One of the things that I think that people will assume is that if you play in Summer League, it's because you need to. And that's not necessarily how teams view it. I think players view it that way. I think players view like, I have to work in the summer, right? The success story that I will continue to like circle in very bright green is Desmond Bane. That to me is the reason for Christian Braun to do this, is that Desmond Bane, his rookie season, was a shooter. That's what he was, is that he was like a great shooter right off the bat. Like, oh, hey, he's got some good defense and he's got some moves, but he couldn't create on ball at all. And so like I like most other people had penciled in Desmond Bane as like, oh, he's one of these like 3-and-D dudes. Like, okay, he can shoot, cut if necessary. You know, he'll make the willing pass, smart player, but like that's the limitation on him. And the Grizzlies sent Desmond Bane to Summer League and we're like, we want you to play on ball all the time. Like all the time. Okay. And I was at those games and it's not like Desmond Bane looked awesome. Like, I'll just tell you right now, Desmond Bane did not like, it wasn't like, whoa, he's got way more in the bag. It was getting him comfortable with those decisions, especially in a tough environment. And it wasn't just the games, it was in practice as well. So you've got like a week, you've got a training camp before Summer League. And you're there with the guys and you're basically learning like, what's your name? And then you go to Vegas and you hang out and you do Vegas things. And then you play in the day. You've got like one practice in the morning on your off day. You have the rest of the day to chill out in Vegas by the pool. You play the next day, etc. And Bane, I talked to like I was the only person in the post-game thing for Desmond. And I was like, I got to talk to him for a few minutes because he's like, I got nowhere else to be. And so like I was talking to him and he was like, yeah, they just told me they want me to work more on ball. And I was like, do you feel it's beneficial? He's like, actually, yeah. He's like, I needed a little bit more experience with running a team this way and being able to understand and see the floor in that capacity because I'd always been in my role. And like he talked about that. And when I look at Christian, a lot of what I think back to is the times in the postseason when he struggled were times when Christian was not sure of what to do. And I think that seeing the floor in different capacities makes you understand those things. We tend to go the opposite way when we talk about basketball development, where it's you need to understand your space as well as possible. But a better thing is honestly, I think a lot of times, especially in the NBA, is to see those angles from different perspectives and more experience for him, even if he's not like bringing the ball up court and running point. Situations where he catches and is able to pump fake, drive, and understand where to get to on the floor, because he was improvising a lot, especially in the playoffs, on ball, on drives, off spot ups. If they respected his three.
Mixed results. He had a couple games where that like really popped and it kind of won him the game. But then he had games where it wasn't working and it was like, okay, what does this guy do on offense?
Right. And so I think a lot of this also is like, it's when he was able to, and even then, I think the times when he was able to be successful was like him improvising.
Yep.
And so him understanding.
And the rest of the team kind of being surprised by it. Like, what's he doing? Oh, there it is, a layup.
Yeah. Like, oh, hey. So that development, I think, is where there's real value in Christian Braun going to Summer League.
So here's how I would phrase it. A player of Christian's caliber, which is to say we all think he's a role player, right? He doesn't have star. We don't think he's a star. He's a role player, and he could be a very, very good one. At what point, like how many years into their career do the possibilities of what different things they can do diminishes down to almost zero? I think for a player like him, it's like 3 years.
I would say it's more of an age thing. I think by 26, you are what you are.
And that can change for different, like Jordan Clarkson, I think, is a guy that maybe added a little, you know, there's rare examples, but it's not the mold that Christian Braun is. Christian Braun is more of a, do we need this guy to be a spot up 3-point shooter, a pick and roll, you know, third option or second, like what is it? A slasher only, you know, those types of things. Is it all of that or is it some of it? And I wonder, I would imagine that if he plays, and again, I can say this with confidence, the idea is, hey, we want to see you do these couple of things. Is that handle the ball in the pick and roll? Is that handle dribble handoffs? Is that see how many threes you can get up, you know, in one game? Because we want to see the volume. Like, are you good at getting quick shots off? It's something of that they would say, hey, you're going out for one game and we want you to do something different than what you've shown so far, which is your main role. But we want you to step outside of that a little bit. And for one game, I understand it. The only pushback I would have, I have two pushbacks. One, how much are you really going to gain from a summer league game? Especially usually when players play, it's game one. So you're talking about game one. These guys have been together for 4 days. And now you're throwing Christian out there and saying, hey, let's earn a data point about you being a pick and roll ball handler with guys that don't even really know your name yet. I don't know if that's a great data point. And then two, This is the team so far, Matt. Colin Gillespie, Jalen Pickett, Julian Strawther, Peyton Watson, Hunter Tyson, Ishmael Kamagate. And then presumably somebody they'll be bringing in that will be vying for another two-way. That's 7 guys most likely that the Nuggets are going to be evaluating before you get to Christian Braun. At a certain point, there's too many guys. Like to throw another one out there and say, hey, all of you, game 1, I know this is your debut, but we want to see Christian Braun run pick and roll, so we're going to change things up. It seems like you might be doing too many things, but it's not a big deal either way.
I'll push back a little bit. I would actually say that the first game is usually the best performance for a number of reasons. 1, everyone's excited to play. 2, the other guy, they're not being in Las Vegas as a young player making now a lot of money, often on loan from your agent, tends to take its toll over the course of the week there. 2 or 3, I would say you can pretty much have, this is the nice thing about Summer League is you can program, like, we want to see this, right? Like our game plan in this game is we're going to do this. And you have enough minutes in the game because also like Christian's not going to play like third, well, he might play, but like Christian's only going to play a certain amount of minutes, right? You're right that it's a shaky data point. But again, I think it's more about what you learn from the entire process of going from training camp through game 1. Now, they may decide, like, there's 2 things here. They may decide that they don't want Christian to do it, and Christian may decide that he doesn't want to do it, right? Like, some of this is a little, like, Summer League's, once you have a guaranteed contract, Summer League's not entirely voluntary. It's a little voluntary. And so, like, if Christian was like, no, like, I especially if he says, I'm exhausted, like, I just don't feel right, then they're going to be like, don't worry about it. It's fine. Right. But if Christian's like, no, I'm good, I can play, which that honestly seems a little bit more like how Christian is. I think that there's maybe a little bit of value. And here's the thing, there's some risk, but there's zero cost. That's like the difference. There's risk to him playing basketball, but there's risk to him doing anything and like playing pickup, going to pro-ams, anything. There's zero cost here in terms of like you go, it doesn't work out. You didn't see what you wanted to. You can pick it back up in training camp and in off-season workouts back in August. So that's kind of I think one way to look at. The Nuggets are headed towards free agency, and got some vets they're going to want back on, I think, minimums. I'm interested to know how many you would like back, and I'm also curious about if you think that there are specifically things that they should look to add in free agency, given their limited means to do so.
Asking me what I think about that, I'll tell you what I expect to happen. I mean, Bruce is either going to re-sign or not. I don't know if you've been on social media lately, but he sure is posting a lot of him in Nuggets gear and Nuggets stuff. So I love this time of year when everybody's reading the tea leaves on those types of things. Then I saw one where he's wearing Jason Tatum shoes. What does that mean? Like, I love it. We're all gonna have to sit and wait, and then the report will come out, and then we'll know. But I expect that to be the big domino. If he does, my expectation is that the Nuggets are going to run it back with Jeff Green and maybe DeAndre Jordan, and that's going to be their offseason. And Nuggets fans will probably, I think, be excited, rightfully so, because you're bringing back the core that just won a championship, so you should be excited. If they don't get Bruce, though, I kind of don't know that they find anybody else outside of what they already have. It maybe means that they bring back a Reggie Jackson or an Ish Smith or somebody like that, and maybe leave a roster spot open. I know a lot of teams are talking about leaving roster spots open to stay below the apron and below the new, thresholds.
Mess.
What's that?
It's a mess.
Well, Matt, it's funny. You can have 3 two-way guys and 14 roster guys, and you actually save money by having the exact same roster you probably would have had otherwise. And I think teams probably see that. But so I say all that to say it's fun, and we can talk later on in the week about potential options for free agents. I know we're not going to get into that today. I just don't think it's going to matter because I think Denver is more or less locked into the roster they're going to have. With the Bruce caveat there of like, hey, what's he going to do?
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting to kind of look at how many spots they have and how many where they want to fill those guys at, right? Because you've got 6, 7, 8, 9. You got 9 guys on guaranteed deals. And then you've got the 3 rookies that presumably you want to give a spot to. So that leaves 3 spots basically to be able to fill in with what you want, not including the 2-ways. So we'll see kind of where they come out on these types of things. I will say, like, my Halo mentions like Corey Joseph. Corey's fallen off, but I would still be a little bit surprised if Corey was like that low. DeLon Wright is a name that's been mentioned a lot because of the trade exception that exists. The Wizards would have to be basically just in like, oh wow, we just really did not have any offers. And like they've done a bunch of deals that are like, oh wow, we haven't had any offers. So maybe that's entirely the case. They do have a glut at guard right now. But like when I'm looking at the possibilities for guys for the Nuggets, I am way down the list. Like I am way down the list. And these are like, in case of emergency, who do you want? Like, and that's really how that you have to kind of look at this and think about this is like, in case of emergency, who do you want sitting there being like, yeah, I can come in and I can play 20 minutes a night.
Yeah.
Which honestly, like I'll be real with you. I mean, no, this is not surprising at all. I, of course, very predictably, I'm just like, why not just bring back Ish?
I mean, he doesn't fit the MO of what Denver's trying to do just in terms of size, right? I think that's part of it. But there is a world in which, here's my fear, Matt. If you lose Bruce, you lose something real tangible. One, a second ball handler, right? Like and then also just a good player who does a lot of different things. So now you're really counting on all these other pieces. If you bring back Reggie Jackson, to me, the idea that a guy like Pickett or Collin has a chance to overtake them, they start behind him, but you know what? Let's see what happens over the course of the season because Reggie Jackson is not a true point guard. He's a scoring point guard. So automatically, just from a fit perspective, it's like, is that the best use of that? And then 2, he has declined over the last 2 seasons, right? So you're kind of hoping on him being what he was a couple seasons back, and that's a long shot. But would Michael Malone default to Reggie over a rookie that he's probably going to have to suffer for like 2 months before they're like even ready to be a regular season player? That's a tough ask of a head coach. So to me, Reggie Jackson is almost the worst case scenario where he's good enough to deserve to be in front of the rookies, but not good enough that I love the process Denver would be going with for the season.
I mean, I'll just say this, like, I get the whole Ish is small. I get that. I don't think you need to have the entire 1 through 15 fit the profile. I think once you get into that back section, you can be like, well, yeah, no, he's not he's not our intended makeup, but he's not going to play anyway when we were playing our intended makeup. Right?
I 100% agree. It's just that's the regular season thing, and I'm with you. Like regular season, I'm with you.
Well, I think
then when you get to the playoffs, what is your actual top group? And it's Christian, and then after that, we talking Zeke Naji, Peyton Watson. Yeah. Like you start to get to a bunch of guys that are such question marks that I don't like the idea of you can get to a playoffs and only have 6 guys you actually trust.
I will just say this: like I am. Congrats to Reggie Jackson, NBA champion, big government. I just don't. I personally don't feel like he's a fit on the roster.
We actually agree on this point. I would prefer Ish to Reggie on the second unit. I would just prefer that both of those guys, the rookies, have a real shot of overtaking them if they earn it. Not given to them, but if they earn it. But I'm with you. If I had to pick between the two, it's Ish every time. He's more of a point guard.
We'll talk about other options as the week goes on. We got lots of shows to fill in here. So we'll start talking about some of the other free agency options as well. We'll talk about whatever the breaking news is in the NBA. As the offseason drama continues, make sure to check out DNVR on the day for great content, as well as to go check out Adam's Love Fest for Jalen Pickett over on the DNVR YouTube page. Get outside, go touch. I cannot recommend this enough. Go touch grass. I touched a lot of grass over the weekend. Adam, you would be shocked over the weekend. It was so small. I'm so proud of myself. I had no Red Bull. I went 3 days without Red Bull, and I did not get on Twitter except for like a 15-minute period every night.
Good job, man. You know what you missed?
Yeah.
Do you know what you missed?
What?
Nothing. You didn't miss anything. So good job.
And that's why I was proud of myself. Have yourselves a great week. Enjoy the week. We'll talk to you guys again tomorrow on another edition of Locked On Nuggets.